Well, Tony Brown was a fine player for the Saints, played 108 games for the club, including a magical 1997 run as St Kilda progressed through to the grand final. He works now as a player development and welfare manager at the club, and it's fair to say the last sort of 12 to 15 months in Australian sport and the AFL has thrown some challenges up in that regard. But Tony, nice to have you with us.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Nick.
I guess just starting off, we'll touch on your career shortly, but I imagine when you sign on for a role like that, it probably isn't in the fine print that we're going to go into a global pandemic and spend months living away from home and all of those sorts of things. Can you sort of take us through the adjustments within your role dealing with, I guess, the ever-changing COVID landscape?
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, certainly in my role, there's never a dull moment. And 2020 was no exception. We were told we're going into state for 30 days and then we'd be home to our families, and 103 days later we returned. So it was it was quite bizarre for everyone in the industry, but we're all very grateful. We're still employed, and the AFL did an amazing job to get the season done. So, but yeah, there was certainly plenty of support that the players required, the staff, and then also all the families that joined us up in Noosa at the RACB resort. They looked after us up there, and it was terrific to get most of the families up at some point, and it was terrific to win our first final in 9 years, which made it all worth it.
Go back to the start of your career. So drafted in 94, started in 95. Did you get spoken to by the club beforehand? Did they give you much indication you were going to get drafted? And we had a fair draft class with yourself, with Ozzie Jones, Joel Smith, Stephen Ziller. How did that group come through the ranks?
Yeah, I still remember I had a few clubs come into our lounge room down at Leopold, and my mum and dad and myself, and the Saints were one, of course, and John Beveridge and Gary Colling, they sat in our lounge room and said if I was still around at pick 7, they would consider taking me, and very lucky that they read my name out. Pick 7. So I think Joel Smith was pick 4, and then I was 7, and Ozzie was in the early 40s, and we obviously formed a pretty good friendship and played some reasonable footy together over our career at the Saints.
Now the word is, Brownie, and for everyone who's listening, you literally stepped up to the plate this afternoon at about 5:30. We're recording at 8:30, and you've jumped on the call for us at short notice. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us tonight, mate. But word is that you're a pretty handy cricketer back in the day. Was it a hard choice to go with footy over cricket, or how did that work?
It's a good question, Nick. I always grew up thinking I was going to play cricket for Australia. I was fortunate enough to play in a lot of rep sides growing up. I was vice captain of the Victorian under-17 side. We got beaten by New South Wales in the National Carnival at the Adelaide Oval in the final that year, and then I made the under-19 side as a bottom age, and then got drafted. So I love my cricket and my footy, and I still remember making the under-19 Victorian side. Stan Ells was our coach at the end of 94 and 95, of course, and he said I was welcome to go to Sydney and tour with the Vic under-19s, but I probably wouldn't play in my first season in 95. So I decided not to tour with the team and get stuck into the pre-season, and I think I debuted round 5 that year. So I have no regrets. But I did love the cricket and enjoy having a hit now and again with a few mates when I can.
Yeah, so you did debut pretty early that year. You actually had an 8-9 record that year. We went 8-14, so we lost our first 4 or 5. You came in, and then it's actually not a bad omen for us. The record was pretty good from that point on, but played 17 games in your first season. Now, we've spoken, I think we worked it out, that 5 players have worn Danny Frawley's number 2 since he retired. You're now the 3rd of those that we've spoken to, along with Aaron Hamill and Aaron Sipos. Can you take us through, obviously he retires at the end of 95, you go from the number 26 to the number 2. How did that come about? And I guess, how special was it firstly, and how special has it now become, obviously, in light of the recent tragedy?
Well, I was obviously very honoured to be asked if I was interested in wearing the number 2 Guernsey. I wore number 26, as you said, in my first year, Darren, and Kane Taylor, he wore that, and I'd met Kane a couple of times through that. I just cut out then. Are you guys with me?
Got you back. Yep.
Got me back, yeah. And met Kane Taylor a couple of times through Stewie Lowe. He's best mates with Stu, and I was pretty happy with the number 26. And then when Spud retired, I was lucky to play in his last game at the Whitten Oval, and it was over that summer that I was asked that. Danny had mentioned that he'd like to hand the jumper to me, and I was quite surprised, but obviously accepted that with open arms, and was very grateful that I was able to wear the number 2 jumper. And in my office at Moorabbin now, I've actually got the photo of Spud presenting that to me at the MCG. I think it was in the Herald Sun in '96. He was the development coach at Collingwood, and he presented that to me in '96. So I've got that on the wall very proudly.
Yeah, I'm sure he gave you some advice that we know the sort of character he was. Is there anything that's sort of stuck in your mind when he's handed jump over? Did he whisper something? Did he tell you, "Yep, this is what you got to do now? You're wearing this number"?
Yeah, it's funny you ask that. I mean, he gave me lots of advice on and off the field, and I still hold that to this day. But I was about 5 minutes late to that meeting at the MCG, and I actually went to Moorabbin, and Cliffy Pryor was our property steward, and I said, I need the number 2 jumper. I'm going to meet Spud at the MCG for a photo shoot. He's going to present it to me, and he didn't believe me. So I had to convince the property steward that I was telling the truth, and I went in there, and when I arrived, Spud looked at his watch and said, "Brownie, the number 2 is never late." I said, "No, fair enough." And so from that day on, I was always on time.
Mate, for some of our younger listeners, they probably never saw you play and probably only know you as the development welfare manager at the footy club. But maybe for their sake, what type of player for you? Because I was going through some of your numbers, and I was saying to Aaron earlier that for me, by the time you retired in 2000, I was 15. And so your 6 years at the club seemed like a lifetime. It seemed like you were there forever. But in reality, it was 6 seasons. And 1997, I'm sure we'll get to at a point. But in 97, you averaged 2 kicks to every handball. For the rest of your career, it was pretty much 1-to-1. And that was our best year. It was probably your best year as well. What type of player were you, and why was that 97 season so different for you personally?
I still remember it. I played the first game of '97 in the reserves, and Ricky Nixon was my manager. And Ricky, he's had an interesting life, as we all know. But he
another character.
Yes, character, and he was very good to me during my playing days. And he challenged me to go and have a chat to Stan Elves, our coach, and say that pick out a player that was in the opposition team that we were coming up to play, and I said to Stan, I'd like to play on Darren Creswell against Sydney. I think we had them in round maybe 3 or 4, and he said, "Oh, okay, all right, leave it with me." And I came in round 2 and played okay, and then he read the team out on the Thursday night, and I was named in the centre on Creswell, and I actually played okay. I think I kicked a couple of goals and had about 20 touches and probably had the better of Creswell that day, and that kind of gave me the confidence to match it with the best in the midfield. And and then from there, I think obviously we had a pretty good season, and playing alongside Burke and Harvey and Everett in the centre, I was in there with those guys. I learned a lot, and playing with 3 champions of the game, I was very lucky to learn the craft at a young age.
To, I guess, paint the picture for some of those youngsters out there, a very tidy left footer. He used to kick a lot of goals coming through the middle of the ground as well. That 96-97 period. So 96 kind of teased a little bit as to what 97 would do. We won the ANZ Cup in 96. We won 4 in a row at one point. Went on a bit of a run late in the year and just missed out on playing finals. But over that 96-97 period, how was the confidence levels within the group, and were you confident that what was going to happen in 97 did ultimately happen or would ultimately happen?
Yeah, well, Ray McLean, who set up and has run leading teams for many years, he joined us at the same time that Ozzy Jones and Joel Smith and myself joined the club in 95. And leading teams as it is now, but yeah, Ray, he was one piece of the puzzle, and it was all around having high standards and agreed behaviours throughout the playing group, and I firmly believe that played a big part of us. I think winning the Women's Moon in 95 and first year to playing in the grand final in 97. So we all drove each other pretty hard. We had a pretty good balance. We enjoyed each other's company off the field, but also worked really hard on the field and the training as well. But so yeah, certainly Ray McLean, we've got to give him a bit of credit for, but also the connection. Stewie Lowe, Robert Harvey, Nathan Burke, Nicky Winmar, all of those guys, they really took us younger guys under their wings, and yeah, we had a really good bond and connection. Yeah, for those 2 or 3 years in 97. Well, 96 was the start of it, and yeah, it showed with our finals in 97 and 98.
As Darren mentioned, the 96 pre-season grand final. We were quite a young team. We came up against the reigning day premiers in the grand final, and we gave them a bit of a lesson that night. But how did the team sort of follow on after that? There's a lot of people think that they may have partied a little bit too hard from it. They might have gone a bit, we're going in a bit better than what we expect into the season, that sort of thing. But how did the team react to that win internally?
Well, I think it was the first silverware the club had won since '66. So by memory, I think the winning side of the ANZ Cup was given $30,000 or $40,000 for $30,000 or $40,000 from the AFL. So there was a significant prize money to it, and clubs did take it pretty seriously. So I think as a young group running out in front of 65,000 at Waverley and beating Carlton, who, as you said, were the reigning premiers, it was a real buzz. So I think that gave us a bit of confidence that we were heading in the right direction. And yeah, Maxie Hudson and Matty Lappin and Ozzy Joel and myself, I think we all become really close. And then with the older brigade, we just clicked.
Now, in 97, when Saints fans talk about 97, we always talk about what if Spider Everett hadn't done his shoulder, what if Laser wasn't suspended or injured, and through different parts of that season. But one that we don't really talk about is Joel Smith's knee injury, and obviously you were really close with Smithy. Can you tell us about the impact that injury had on the club and you as a young group at the time?
Yeah, spot on, Nick. I think, obviously, I firmly believe if we had Everett and or Laser, we would have won. But I think if we had Joel, we would have won also. Still remember vividly the incident. Osborne coming across Joel's knee at the MCG was actually my 50th game. So running through the banner at the start of the game was a buzz. Kicking the first goal at the G that day was a buzz, and then Joel going down, it was just sickening feeling. They kept replaying it on the big screen, and when one of your best mates is hurt, it's just said a real silence around the ground. And I've still got a photo at home of me patting Joel on the head in the change rooms at the G after the game, and he's got tears coming down his eyes, and we just knew that it was pretty bad. And then the days following, we would visit him in hospital regularly, and then he moved back in with his mum and dad, and we spent a heck of a lot of time with him that next 6 months. And then unfortunately he left, but maybe fortunately for him, he had a great career then at the Hawks. But yeah, we were shattered that he was no longer with us, and he was a massive loss. Because if we had Smith, Everett, and Vidovig, I've got no doubt we would have won that day in September.
Obviously, we lost Matty Young, I think, in the prelim as well with a hammy, and obviously we know the challenges that Winmar and Lowe faced that week leading up to the game too. So it was a bit of a perfect storm. But I mean, I remember it was probably 12 when Joel Smith did that knee. I think it was nearly 70,000 at the MCG, a big game against Collingwood, which we ended up winning. I don't think I've seen the footage since, but if my memory serves me correct, it's one of the more sickening-looking knee injuries in terms of just the bend and how Osborne came across the knee. But we've spoken a lot about
30 years. In 30 years of watching footy, I reckon it's still one of the most gruesome injuries I've seen on a footy field, which is amazing.
Wasn't.
Well, I remember the surgeon coming out at the hospital and telling us it was like a car injury.
Yeah. It does put that in perspective. But we've spoken a lot about the 97 grand final and a lot of those what-ifs. But you as young guys, so that close-knit group that you have, so Matty Lappin and Aussie Jones, who also in the game with you, can you sort of take us through how you all dealt with that? Was it a case of, we're young, we're a good side, that hurt, but we'll be back again? Did you sort of take that attitude, or did it really take quite a while to get over the loss, or was that something that maybe impacted more later in the career when you realised how fleeting those chances can be?
Yeah, another good question. We're obviously, I think 20 years of age or 21 years of age, and we just thought it was going to happen again, and we I think took it for granted a little bit that we were playing in a grand final, and maybe we should have won, but we were beaten by the better side in the end. But I think we knew that we had the talent. We knew that there was some really experienced guys, and then some of us young guys had just re-signed, I think, for another 2 or 3 years. So we firmly believed it was just going to happen again, and I don't know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but yeah, maybe we took the foot off the pedal a little bit. Maybe we didn't have as big a pre-seasons as we should have, and at the elite level, as you guys know, if you don't improve each year, you just get left behind. So yeah, it was obviously one that got away, but yeah, probably took things for granted a bit more than we should have.
98 was actually reasonably good. We sat on top of the ladder at some points during the season, and then come finals time we're knocked out in straight sets. Was there a feeling there that things were about to change, and as we know, things did change? Did you have the feeling that something was going to be happening?
Well, certainly, I think us younger guys, we weren't across everything happening with Stan particularly, but we didn't realise how good a coach Stan was until he left. But it was a really interesting period. We got beaten. I think Greg Stafford kicked a goal on the siren at the SCG to beat us in that first final. And Stan made us sing the song in the change rooms after the game. And that was bizarre. We came out and played Melbourne at the G in the second final, and I think we were about 10 points down at half time, and Stan gave us a fair bake, and that was the last time Stan ever coached us. We got beaten obviously, and then during that summer the board made a decision to move Stan on and bring Tim Watson in. So again, we were all pretty young, and we weren't really sure what was happening, and there was all sorts of talk about the players have made a pact to get rid of the coach and all of that, but certainly that wasn't the case, and certainly wasn't something we were aware of. But yeah, looking back on it, the 97, or the NZ Cup Premiership 96 and 97-98 season, they were amazing years, and a couple that just we let slip.
By the time 99 started, I mean, you'd been around in the team for 4 or 5 years already, and in footy terms, that's a fairly senior type of player. What was it like having spent your entire career under Stan Alves, then moving into the Tim Watson era?
Yeah, well, we all knew that Tim was a champion player, and he read the news on Channel 7. So we knew that he was a legend of the game. So getting a high-profile person in like Tim was, I think, quite exciting at the start. And absolutely no disrespect to Tim, but we, as I said before, we didn't realise how good Stan was until he was gone. Alistair Clarkson, he came in under Tim, I think, in his first year, and then Clarko, we recognised pretty early that he was going to be a pretty good coach. Probably not as good as he's turned out to be, but certainly. And Tim would acknowledge it now that it probably he wasn't cut out for it. So, well, I think there's excitement initially. I think we were on top after about round 7 or 8, or certainly up towards the pointy end after round 7, 8 and 99 season, and then we hardly won a game after that. So, yeah, and I don't know whether Tim didn't have the right assistants around him either, but yeah, we certainly fell off a cliff pretty quick, unfortunately.
So you were 7-3 after round 10 and third on the ladder in that 99 season. And obviously people pinpoint that Hawthorn game where we were 1,000 points up at Waverley and obviously how the wheel turns from that sort of day onwards. Is that, and I mean, we've all, obviously treading reasonably carefully and respectfully. Was it more, do you feel, just that sort of tactical component when games were changing, that maybe somebody that hadn't done an apprenticeship, that hadn't been somewhere else, found it really difficult to maybe judge the changing trends of a game and be able to read what was happening in the way that perhaps Stan could?
Yeah, you're probably right. And I'm sure Tim would acknowledge that now, but certainly, I just see today with the amount of support that the senior coach gets, I'm not sure whether that was there for a young, inexperienced coach like Tim coming in, whether he had that or not. But unfortunately, didn't work out the way he liked it and the way we would have liked it, and then significant change was made post 2000, and unfortunately, I was one of those people that got squeezed out when Blighty came in.
Brownie, I want to ask you something. I guess you might have different perspectives on it from a playing perspective, and now you're being part of a footy department. But there's a lot of talk, around footy fans and football data, I guess, as to what momentum means. And Parker touched on that game against Hawthorn. But when you're out there as a player and momentum swings out on the field, is that something that you can feel as a player? And when you're there, either you've been on the boundary line as a runner, you've been involved in footy departments for a number of years now. Is that something that you can feel, that you can define?
It certainly is, Nick. Yeah, you actually, you know it's happening, you can see it happening, and sometimes it's really hard to stop. And that's where you need experienced heads out on the ground, not in the coach's box, out on the ground to actually take control and, recognise it, but then take control and do something about it. And that's why Jaron Geary, he's been missed a bit this year. It's great to have him back now. He's brilliant at it. Rewalt and Montagna and Hayes obviously were brilliant at it. Who've been involved with being back as a runner and a development and welfare manager. You need key figures out on the ground to make a change. Obviously, I get instructions from Rats and the coaches to make some change from the sideline, but ultimately it's up to them to stop that momentum at key points.
You said you pushed out at the end of the 2000 season when Blighty was coming in and brought in a dozen players from other teams, and you probably looked a bit from the outside, I assume, at the club just to see how they were going, that sort of thing. Do you think they made the right decision at the point of round 15 pushing him out the door as well, or do you think they should have probably stayed with him as coach and just tried to see it out a little bit, or it just wasn't working properly?
It's something I probably can't comment on, Aaron, because I wasn't in the inner sanctum anymore. Certainly he had his very strong voice and had been very successful, and I'm not 100% sure that he actually wanted to coach again. It was well documented that the club paid him a lot of money to come out of retirement and coach again. And when things weren't maybe going to plan, they had a change of heart. But yeah, certainly he was a different operator by all reports. But yeah, I wasn't in the inner sanctum, so I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I was asking the question because you probably knew most of the group, so it was whether they would react better to having that longer term sort of thing, or yeah, that's whether it was a changeover that was probably going to sort of lose momentum again, I guess.
Yeah, well, certainly, I think there was 15 new players come in, so I did know a lot of the guys still, but there was a huge chunk of the boys I didn't know. And yeah, I think by memory, Blighty was trying to wrap up a couple of our senior boys, and I don't know if that sat well with the playing group and the powers to be either. So yeah, there's probably a range of reasons, but yeah, I never met the man, and I'm never sat in a team meeting with him. But yeah, he's got an amazing record.
It's the unfortunate part when we look at 97, obviously the fallout from that. So Jamie Shanahan didn't play for the club again. Joel Smith didn't play for the club again after that year. Matty Lappin had one more year in 98. Nicky Winmar had one more year in 98. Obviously yourself and Jason Heatley and guys like that got through to about 2000. The Wakeland's still about that same stage as well. So that the changes would come reasonably quickly, unfortunately, for the group. But I mean, you were 23 years of age and had played 108 AFL games, which is quite remarkable by modern to have an AFL career end at 23 when you played over 100 games. In terms of that, you obviously went back to South Australia. Were you able to go on and just obviously enjoy the rest of your tenure, or was there ever a feeling that, you know, just based on pure timing more than anything, you might have left a few AFL games on the table?
Well, certainly I remember getting told on the Thursday, I think there was 13 or 14 delisted on the Tuesday, and I was called in on the Thursday and given the news. So when you're told you're not required anymore in any organisation, it's a kick in the guts, and yeah, something I was shattered with, but wasn't sure then what to do, and I was very lucky to go and have or sign with the Port Adelaide Magpies in the SANFL, and lucky we had a reasonable year. We played in a preliminary final over there, and I was lucky to win the McGarry medal, and had a number of clubs talk to me about giving me a second opportunity back in the AFL, and unfortunately that didn't happen. But certainly no regrets. I didn't nominate again for the draft after that. I went back to uni and did a Bachelor of Education at Uni SA, and yeah, was studying full time whilst playing SANFL footy with the Port Adelaide Magpies. I went over there for 1 year and stayed for 5, and yeah, had 5 of the best years of my life there. An unbelievable football club, and 5 years I'll never forget.
You mentioned that feeling of sitting in the room being told that, you know, you're not going to be re-signed, or that your services are no longer required from a playing perspective. How much has that experience, I guess, impacted on your later life and the second part of your football career, you know, as a welfare officer or welfare manager and development manager?
Yeah, I tell a lot of people, Nick, that I think having sat in the players' shoes for 6 years as an elite athlete, having been dropped, having been injured, having to work through those challenges, having been delisted at a young age, and then having to get a real job, I suppose, has really helped me in my current role. I think my teaching, I taught for 7 or 8 years as well, Lobe 6 homeroom teachers at 3 different schools: Sandringham East Primary School, Haileybury College and Christian College down in Geelong. So I think having played the game and having an education background has given me some really good skills to assist me in the current role as the development and welfare manager. And I don't talk about my career very often to the boys, but can certainly talk about some of my experiences and some tools and strategies that I used. And yeah, certainly I'm helping them on their journeys. And if I don't have the expertise in a certain field, I need to point them in the right direction to provide further support.
Two quick questions. So, having captained Port Adelaide, where you stand on the bars and stripes debate at the moment, that just seems to be there all the time. And how did you get back into the AFL system? Back, funnily enough, at Collingwood.
Yeah, I signed a petition a couple of years ago as one of the living past Port Adelaide captains to get that through, but I'm not sure how they're going to go with that. And how I got back involved in the AFL, well, Matty Lappin, who we mentioned before, who's a teammate in the mid-90s, he was an assistant coach with Malthouse at Collingwood, and he rang me up one January and said, Brownie, would you like to come and do the running at Collingwood? And I said, I'm not sure if I want to be the runner. And anyway, long story short, I went and met Malthouse, Jeff Walsh and Paul Mercuria in the boardroom at Collingwood, and they said, Brownie, you obviously played the game, you're a teacher, so you must be a good communicator. We'd like you to come and do the running match day. So in 2011, they'd just beaten the Saints in 2010. 2011, I was the runner. I think Collingwood averaged 74,000 at a home game, and played Geelong in the grand final that year. So it was a pretty amazing experience to be involved on match day. I'd go to training during the school holidays when I was not teaching, and then be there game day. So yeah, to work under someone like Mick and Jeff Walsh, who was the footy manager, who was an amazing operator, it whet my appetite to get back involved. And it's funny how it works. Scott Waters was their defensive coach, and he got the senior gig at the Saints the next year and said, Brownie, I want you to come and do the running and potentially step in a role if one opens up. And that's exactly what I did.
Brownie, what does a welfare manager or development manager do, and how do you see our current list at the moment?
Yeah, I'll get that question a lot, Nick. And my role, I oversee the induction for all the new players coming in. So the two boys, Max and Cooper, who we drafted last night, I make contact with them as soon as their names are read out, contact their families, organise relocation if they have to come from interstate or country Victoria, assist with living, making sure that they're engaged in something meaningful off the field. So we've got 43 on our list now, and all our boys are engaged in something meaningful, whether that's a carpentry apprenticeship. We've got 13 boys at university doing 1 or 2 subjects a semester, number of boys doing short courses, business courses, real estate, fitness courses. So making sure they're developing as people. And the first port of call if there's any issues. I liaise with the parents and the partners, and making sure they're developing off the field and improving themselves as people, so when they transition out, they've actually got some skills to transition out into the real world. So I certainly support them when they get squeezed out, whether they get enlisted or retire. Some that need a little bit more than others with the support at the other end. But they're always welcome back at the club, and we'll make sure that they're aware of that when they leave.
Is there any, this is a final question, is there any in terms of players that are actively on the list in terms of welfare type issues? I'm probably asking a really broad question, but if you've got somebody like let's say a Max King, for example, who appears to be going through the yips per se, from a welfare point of view, would that be something where you might put an arm around him and say, is there anything that we could do in terms of just having a chat, or whether it's time away, or whether it's more time in this space, or even hypothetically the Matthew Lloyd type scenario that was proposed? Is that something that you would be involved in?
Certainly I'm there to support Max and any of the boys in any way. I actually taught Max in Year 5 at Harvard College, so it's quite unique that I'm now supporting him still in a welfare development space. But certainly I don't like to get involved in the coaching side of things. There's enough coaches and expertise in that space. So he's got Jared Ruffhead, who's doing a great job, obviously Rats, and all the assistant coaches, but also Matty Lloyd, was his coach in Year 12 at Haileybury. So I think Maxie's got enough people in his ear and supporting him with working through his challenges in front of goal at the moment. But Yeah, absolutely. If the boys need a hand with something footy related, I'm more than happy to give advice or assist with, but mainly with the off-field stuff that I focus on.
Tony, you're a joy to watch in full flight. It's great to have you still involved in the club, and on the basis of the chat and many other things, that the boys are certainly in safe hands, and we appreciate you joining us, and well done on all that you've been able to do with the challenges that football has faced in the last couple of years as well. But I appreciate your time.
No worries at all, Darren. Thanks for having me.